Welcome back, everyone. Well, starting this spring sports season, the PIAA put new regulations on pitchers. The goal, to prevent injuries from overuse. Bob I got a chance to talk with some teams about how the new rules are affecting their athletes.
North Pocono baseball coach Brian Jardine is keeping a close eye on the number of pitches his ace Ryan Dion is throwing this season. The PIAA, which oversees all high school sports in Pennsylvania, has adopted a new rule for this season when it comes to the number of pitches a player can throw in a game. In the past, it was innings worked that counted.
Anything that's going to help a kid, as far as being injury prone, that's a good thing with me. I'm not going to argue with it. The way it's implemented, I wish, there was more to it. We're just adding numbers to max preps, and we're trying to meet in between innings, and it makes it kind of awkward. It takes a little bit away from the game. But overall, yeah, the idea behind it, I get it. Good that we're trying to help these young kids out.
These kids' arms are young. You want to protect them. And everybody's in the same boat, so no one really has an advantage, over it. So I think it's a good rule.
Under the new rules, a pitcher who throws 76 to 100 pitches in an outing must not pitch for 3 days. A pitcher cannot throw more than 100 pitches in a game, which is normally about 7 innings. The levels after that require 2 days and even a day's rest. No pitcher may appear in more than 2 consecutive days of competition. The maximum number of pitches he can throw is 200 in a week. These new rules have changed the way a coach can manage a game, especially with rainouts and more than 3 games in a week.
There's going to be certain scenarios where if you go down in a game a couple of runs early, do you just leave a kid out there, or do you pull him and try to bring him back later in the week? So there's a lot of things you have to look at when it comes to that. And as a staff, we sit down and we have plan A, plan B, plan C ready to go for each and every game. So that's just one more factor we'll put into it as we're trying to determine who's going to pitch and how much, and how we're going to set them up for the rest of the week.
I'm somewhat familiar with the pitch counts because of coaching in the league, but it's definitely a struggle, especially when you have several games in a row. It's trying to find a workaround, but I think overall it's a good thing. It's going to help these kids' arms. You don't want to extend them by any means, but I think overall it's a good thing.
The recommendations were made by the National Baseball Steering Committee and put forth by the National Federation of State High School Associations. On that committee is well-known Tommy John surgeon Dr. James Andrews. Locally, Dr. Mike Tracy from Scranton Orthopedic Specialists has performed and cares for baseball players and others who require this surgery.
The pitchers that I see generally have elbow pain. One of the most common injuries that we see in high school, college, and even professional athletes who are pitchers would be injuries to the ligaments on the inside part of the elbow. This is what the general public knows as the Tommy John ligament or the Tommy John surgery. It has to do with the stress that's placed on that ligament by the pitching motion. So this is not an injury we generally see in the general public. Rather, it's something that's very specific to the overhead throwing motion. Most commonly, we think about baseball pitchers, but we can see this in the tennis serve, we can see it in javelin throwers, so it's really anything that involves that overhead motion, that stress that goes through the inside part of the elbow.
He believes the changes are a positive sign.
I think that's a great step that the PIAA is taking, and here's why. Anybody who watches a baseball game understands that a pitcher can come out and pitch 1 inning and throw 7 or 8 pitches, or they can throw 20, 30 pitches, depending on how long that inning goes on. What I tell my patients, the best way to think about this is that any kid's arm has a certain number of pitches in it over his or her lifetime. If you use up all those pitches by the time the kid's 18, that's a tragedy in my mind. So trying to limit the number of pitches is going to keep our kids safer, and it's also going to prolong their career and help them in the long run.
The key to prevention, according to Dr. Tracy, is diagnosing it earlier, with players starting to pitch sooner and sooner, and baseball becoming a 9-month sport with travel teams. It's up to the coaches, parents, and doctors to keep the players healthy.
One of the biggest issues that we see is that these kids are playing on multiple teams with overlapping seasons. We know that kids should not be playing year-round. I tell all my patients, kids who pitch more than 8 months out of the year are several hundred times more likely to end up in the operating room. Kids need to take a rest. And again, that's incumbent on us as the adults to step in there and do what's best for the kids.
There is a lot of misinformation out there about Tommy John surgery. even if it seems to be a normal part of a pitcher's routine.
This surgery is only done in an injury setting. Even when it's done in an injury setting, the surgery can work very well and really can bring kids back. Again, another misconception is they come back throwing harder. That's not necessarily true. The goal is to get them back to competitive throwing. However, it's easily a year-long recovery process, and it is by no means a guarantee that these kids will ever get back to the level that they were beforehand. So this is not a surgical decision that should be undertaken lightly. This is a very significant injury and subsequent surgery for someone who's trying to already compete at a very high level and expects their arm to do things that most of us could never hope to do. And so, right, the key really is prevention. Yes, there's a surgery that we have that we can help these kids with. I'd rather not do that surgery. I'd rather keep them healthy and keep them out of the operating room.
And that's why the new PIAA pitching rule makes sense. Bob-eyed, Fox 56 Sports.
Right after the break, Dunmore grad and King's College sophomore Jill Korjeski is excelling at the national level in shot put.